Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Today I want to talk about Spokeshaves, and I've got a few of them in my collection and a few more that I'm not even showing here. So today we're actually going to go through, look at a few different types, how to sharpen them, how to set them up, what to look for when you are picking out a Spokeshave, and as much information as I can cram into this short video. So let's take a look at this. Now before I go into this any further, I'm going to be soon switching over these types of videos where I'm talking over to my second channel. And that way I can have a second channel where it's all the talking videos and the how-to and information like that. And then the main channel where I'm going to be doing the no talking videos. So if you want to watch more of those, go over to Wright 2. I will leave a link to that up here. Usually when someone comes to me and say, what Spokeshave should I buy? I say normally a 151 or a Stanley 51, something of that nature. It has a flat bottom, it's easy to adjust, it has several things that just make it a simple Spokeshave. It's an easy one to learn, especially because it has a little bit larger sole to it, so it can rest on the wood and pull a little bit simpler. You're not worrying about being at the right angle or different things like that. The next thing that people want is a round bottom Spokeshave. Now a round bottom Spokeshave is a little bit harder to control because the surface is rounded. It doesn't rest perfectly flat on the wood, and so it'll rock around on there, and so you have to get the angle just right as well as pulling it. But that being said, a rounded bottom can do a concave surface, and you can actually get down into some of those nooks and crannies. So I find myself using a rounded Spokeshave more than I do the flat bottom Spokeshave, but the rounded bottom is a lot harder to learn, so yeah, you're eventually going to want 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 and 6 and 7, and you're going to need a lot more. Now I want to take you through a few of them here that I have collected, and these are just some of the more common ones and what you're looking for. A Stanley 151 has these 2 depth adjusting screws on here. It makes it very easy so you can adjust one or the other, and you can tip it side to side. This is probably the most common one you're going to come across, with a large sole on here. It is a simple design, very common, and just a general workhorse, so you'll find these all over the place. Next I have the Stanley 53. It's fairly similar. It has a very similar grip on it. It's just a little bit more difficult to adjust because you're actually going to be tapping on this to move it in and out and move it side to side. So a lot of the old ones are going to be hammer adjusted. That sounds difficult, but it's really as simple as just tapping around like that to get it exactly where you want it. And these are fairly common and really cheap. The next you're going to come across quite a few of these with the concave sole and the flat sole. Honestly, I've never used this. I have no reason to use a concave sole. Some people swear by it for cleaning up sticks and rounded surfaces, but I really don't see any need for that because you can do the exact same thing with a flat. So yeah, I've never used this. This one is probably my favorite of any I've ever found, and they're hard to come by. I have one that's missing a few parts that I purchased, and it was like 35 bucks for this one missing parts. Finding one with all the parts is very expensive. But this is one of my favorites. You can actually change the sole around here, so this will be both flat and rounded, and it's a very comfortable tool to hold. And then of course you can always make your own, and I have a couple videos on making Spokeshaves, so if you want to see that, I'll leave a link to it down below. It's a relatively simple thing, especially if you get one with these tangs. They go in and out very easily, and so it's just 2 pieces. You have the wood body, and then you have the blade on there. And you put them together, and you got a Spokeshave. Then I picked up a few other odd ones, like this aluminum one a while ago, which is kind of fun to play with. It has tangs just like the wooden ones, but there's also screws that hold it in place. I was given this monster a while ago, and I keep intending to clean it up and sharpen it. I've seen one other like this. It's just huge. I don't know if there's any particular use for it, but it would be a lot of fun to play with. And then you can also get into travashers. These have the rounded, the convex bottom to them. These are great for getting into the bottoms of seats in your Windsor chairs and such. Just a really useful tool. I don't have a lot of them, I only have 2, but they're a lot of fun when you need that particular tool. Now, this is not a comprehensive list of all Spokeshaves out there. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of styles and types and different methodologies, and if I were really to go into that, this video would be incredibly long, not to mention I don't have them all. I just have this small selection of them. So as much as I would love this to be a total comprehensive view of everything on Spokeshaves, I'm not going to get that far. So let's work through some of the basic things that are true across all Spokeshaves, so when you pick up that weird weirdo and you're like, how do I work this? You'll know an idea and it'll get you fairly close. But 99% of them out there are going to be fairly standard, and we'll be covering those ones here. So how exactly do you go about sharpening these? I want to look at two common styles. Number one, the traditional iron. It's just a simple flat plate. This is basically a big chisel or a plane iron. It's just not quite as long as you're used to, which has a few bits that make it difficult. And then number two, these weirdos. Now I covered this a little bit more when making a spoke shave, so if you want to see that in more detail, I'll have that video linked to down below. So as with any sharp edge, this is basically just two planes that intersect. So just like a chisel, you have a flat back, and then you have a bevel that you need to grind. You do the same thing on this. Usually once you've sharpened the back, you never need to touch the back again. I do that by putting it flat down on the plate and grinding it out until I get a nice shiny smooth surface all the way across. Now on this one I have that nice shiny smooth surface, so I'm not going to be messing with that. It might take a little bit, but once it's done once, you never have to mess with it again. The bevel, on the other hand, gets a little complicated as there is not much to hold on to. So most jigs that you would do a plane iron in just can't hold this because there isn't anything back here to grab onto. And I really try not to overthink it. Just hold it in your hands, and then I let it slide on my fingernails, and I'll sharpen on that. So I just match whatever that bevel is, set my fingernail on there, and I use that as a guide to hold it in place, just pinching it between my thumb and fingernails. And if you're just cleaning it up, you're not going to do enough to your fingernails to cause a problem. And just with a few passes like that, you can get this thing nice and sharp. Then of course, as always, I'll finish it with the strop, doing the same thing here. 20 or 30 strokes, flip it over, 20 or 30 strokes on this side, and I'll get that nice clean edge. And if I've done it right, a burr will just barely fall off at the very last moment. So what angle should I sharpen it at? Everyone wants to know, what angle should I sharpen it at? Somewhere between 5 degrees and 45 degrees is best. That was a joke. Most of mine I sharpen at about 30 or 35 degrees, somewhere in that range. I really don't matter too much. I'll just set it at whatever the last angle was, lock it at that, and sharpen there. I'm not going to worry about it much. I'm never going to check it. I'm never going to go back and look at it. I'll just see, is it somewhere around 30, 35? Yeah, we're good to go. The reason being is that most spoke shaves, or at least all with an iron, are going to be beveled down. So the cutting angle is determined by the bed of the spoke shave, not by the bevel on the iron. Now with the older wooden style and tang spoke shaves, the bevel is going to be up. It's pretty obvious because that's how the tangs then go into the body itself. And for these, flattening the back is fairly easy. I'm just going to put it on here. I'm going to pinch the tang with both fingers, and then I'm going to stick one other finger over on here, and I will sharpen it on the plate that way. It doesn't take too much time until you get that nice, smooth, shiny surface all the way across there. The question then comes, how do you get this bevel? It just doesn't fit in there. And that is one of the reasons why I make these removable. So you can pull them out, you can flip this over the edge and have the tang hanging down, and then I'm just going to rest on the tang and I'll do my sharpening on there just like that. And with that little bit, I can get it nice and shiny all the way across there, make sure I get a little bit of a burr hanging off the back. And then we can come over here and strop it off this way, flip it over, strop it off this way, and we can get ourselves a nice sharp edge. Now if you want to see more information on my sharpening method and system, I'll leave a link to that down below, as well as links to the plates that I use, and I do make my own strops that I sell. So that's enough with the sharpening. Let's actually get into the fun part. How exactly do you use one of these? Now when people first get started, they grab it and they hold the handle, and they're just like manhandling these things. They're not intended to be that way. These are very delicate tools that need a light touch. You're basically just going to put your thumb on the top, put your fingers underneath, and that's all you need. That little bit of grip right there is how you're shaping it. You'll notice that there's usually some flanges or something here that fit really well on the thumb, and you can just hold it that way and get your shavings. The rest of your fingers are just there for a little bit of stability or to control it, moving it one way or the other. These fingers are what are actually doing the work. So let's start with a flat bottom plane. The Stanley number 151 makes it very easy. I'm just going to be gripping it with the two fingers here, and we can pull it along. You can set it on that flat bottom and it will run along. Now one of the things I have on this is, on this side I have a very low cut, and on this side there's a very heavy cut. And so if I'm just using this side, I can get these nice clean finishing shavings, and if I bring it over to this side, then I can get these really heavy cuts and take down through some material, and then I can come back over here and clean off what I've missed off with much lighter cuts. And so you'll often see spoke shaves where the blade is skewed one way or the other, and that's just because you can get a little bit different cut from one side to the other. So for adjusting these spoke shaves, I'm going to back these up, pull the screw, pulls the blade, and I'm going to go until I don't have anything cutting. Well, in this case, I'm just getting a very light, wispy shaving. That's actually where I want it to be. So let's back it up a little bit farther and I won't be cutting anything. There, now I'm not cutting anything. Over on this side, I'm probably cutting something a little bit because that was the heavier side. No, that one's good too. And now I'm just going to push them forward because you want the last movement being pushing the iron forward. So now we go, I need a little bit more. I'm trying to get a light shaving on this side. Just a little more. There, I've got a light shaving on this side. And then I'm going to work with this side. I'm going to push it down a little bit more so I can get a heavier shaving over here. A little heavier than that. There we go. Now we have a heavy shaving on this side and a light wispy shaving on this side. Happy curls. And that's one of the reasons why I say the Stanley 151s are a great tool to start with. They're very easy to adjust, they're very easy to sharpen, they're very easy to work with. So definitely a plane worth grabbing. Now let's move over to a rounded sole. And so this has a round sole on it, which makes it hard. If it's tipped too far forward, you're not getting anything. If it's tipped too far back, you're not getting anything. And if it's right on, then you're going to get those beautiful shavings you're looking for. And getting that rotation is what matters. And so you're spending a lot of time trying to get that rotation. And some people, when they're starting, they're going to get this nice wispy shaving. As they get farther back, they get heavier and heavier. And then suddenly they skip out because you're rotating it too far. You don't want to rotate as you go. You want to keep it the same all the way across. So try not to move your wrists. Try to lock it in place. And then the same thing with this. I want a light cut on one side. That one's so light it's not actually cutting anything. On this side, it's a bit heavier. And then I can come back and adjust that with the mallet here. This one has a little iron. That's about all I need. And I can rock it along. The nice thing about rounded bottom is when you get good at it, you can control it and you can get a really heavy cut by rocking it back just a hair. And then I can bring it forward just a little bit. I can come back and clean those off. And so by rolling it, I can actually adjust the depth of cut on there. Much is going to be the same with a plane that has a tang bottom on there. You just want to make sure you don't ride it on the iron. Because it's flat, you're not going to get anything. You actually want to ride it on the front of the mouth. So you're going to tip it forward just a little bit and then use that to peel out. This one has a much smaller sole on it. I created it very, very little so that I can very lightly come in as a rounded body would, and I can adjust my cut. You'll also notice on all these, I'm not running straight across the board. I'm not cutting directly on at 90 degrees. I'm skewing it almost like 45 degrees. And that skewing will actually give it a lower effective cut. So you are lowering the angle at which the blade is attacking the wood. Whereas if I go straight across, I'm just sticking with whatever I sharpened it at. Skewing it across often gives you a nice, clean, easy cut that's easier to work with. And then once you've mastered working with a flat bottom plane and a rounded bottom plane, then you can start trying to play with a travisher. And most of the time they are a combination between the two. They're not quite flat and they're not quite rounded, but you can play with them a lot more because you can focus. If I just want to work on something over on this side, or I can work over something on this side, and I can actually adjust the iron to be slightly different from one side to the other, giving me something to play with. Of all the planes that I have, and this is just a selection of the ones I use the most common, the Miller's Fall rounded bottom is the one I grab most often. It's just a simple plane that I can do most anything with, and once you've mastered that rounded bottom, you can use it in any situation you would use a flat bottom with. It's just a fun tool and it feels very good in the hand. Very easy to manipulate, very fun to feel with. Second most, the Stanley 151 is one that I'm going to be using quite a bit. If I'm just wanting to do something quick and easy and I don't want to think about it, this is the one I'm going to grab. Gives you that nice clean surface, plus having the sole on there does a little bit of burnishing. I grabbed this one quite a bit as well. So what exactly is a spoke shave for? I've used them quite a bit for doing chamfering, which it makes it very nice when you want to get into something that has an ever so slight curve on it. Spoke shaves get into those corners a lot easier than other planes. Though most of the time I am just going to grab a block plane. A spoke shave does chamfering very well. Where the spoke shave really shines is anytime you want to work on something with a rounded surface, or in this case, as I'm going around it, and I'm actually creating a slight curvature to the surface, sort of how I would with a molding plane. This allows you to just detail it in. So anytime you get an organic feeling on a handle or a bent piece, spoke shaves are phenomenal for that. You can often think of the spoke shave as the more delicate finishing version of the draw knife. And a draw knife really is a spoke shave but without the sole, so it's more aggressive and bites in. Although if you do master your skill with this, you can get finishing cuts with a draw knife that almost will match a Spokeshave. It just takes a lot more time and practice to get to that point. So this is one of those videos that I get to the end and I feel like there are so much more I want to say. There's lots of other ideas that come into this, and I would like to go into more detail and talking about these more. So I might end up doing a live sometime in the future where we actually talk through Spokeshaves, how to sharpen them and things like that. And if there's any particular question, or if you have one that is of interest to you and you have some questions about that, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to look through those, and I do actually read through all the comments and I answer most of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, and comments down there. So I think that's about it for today. This is a topic that I love, and anytime you actually get to spend with a Spokeshave and play with it, it's a good time in the shop. A great way to make curls. You just have to make sure you don't go too far. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. That really does help it out. Also, I do not have any sponsors on this channel. It's not that I haven't gotten any, it's that I don't want them on this channel. I want this channel to be what I say. So if you want to help out with that and say thank you, I do have Patreon as well, as you can click the join button down there and become a member here on YouTube. That really does help out the channel. So I think that's about it for now, and until next time, have a wonderful day. You know how I get my head so clean? It's with a Spokeshave shave. Oh yeah, get rid of all that hair.